Welcome to the Working Tools Podcast, where today we'll be interviewing Jaime Paul Lamb.
Ladies and gentlemen, brethren all, welcome to the Working Tools Podcast, a casual conversation around Freemasonry. First, it's important to note that our thoughts and opinions are our own and do not reflect those of our Grand Lodge or respective craft or concordant bodies. Please connect with us and ask questions via our website at theworkingtoolspodcast.com.
Today on the Working Tools Podcast, we have 3/4 of our usual hosts. I'm Matt Appel, a member of Mill Creek Lodge number 243 in Montlake Terrace, Washington. And we have David Colbeth from King Solomon 60 in Auburn, Washington. And Craig Graham from Kalamalka Lodge number 160 in British Columbia. And we are honored to have with us this evening Jaime Paul Lamb, who's a past master of Ascension Lodge number 89 in Phoenix, Arizona, and a Masonic author of some renown. So thank you, Jaime, for being on our show. We appreciate it.
Thanks so much for having me. It's a pleasure.
So, Jaime, as we said before we started, usually we start off with a brief conversation of how you got into Masonry. So what drew you to the craft, and how did you end up being a Mason?
Well, I was 40 years old, so that was about 15 years ago. I'm 55 now, and I think it sounds sort of like a cliche, but I was just kind of looking for a foundation at that point. My sort of theological structure was decrepit and sort of not in great shape, and it was just a transitional time for me at 40, and somebody gave me a copy of Manly P. Hall's Secret Teachings, and by the time I was maybe halfway through it, I had petitioned a lodge. This was back in Connecticut, Norwalk, Connecticut, and St. John's Lodge number 6. They've since had a merger, so now they're Old Well St. John number 6 in Norwalk. But yeah, I guess, that was fascinating to me because I didn't know that whole world, when like reading through Secret Teachings, like obviously you read that and then later you realize that, yeah, Manly P. Hall was a little fast and loose with stuff. A lot of it, you got to remember, a lot of that was what he delivered in just lectures, like off extemporaneous riffing. So, and I think, and then some of that they'd make transcriptions and turn those into some of the pamphlets and things. But so yes, there's going to be some just riffing on ideas and stuff. But yeah, it was a nice kind of broad, not totally deep overview, but that's what I needed at that time. I needed to know the lay of the land in terms of Western esotericism. And he plainly deals with Freemasonry along with Rosicrucianism, Hermetism, Kabbalah, stuff like that, and Gnosticism and things, ceremonial magic, etc. And it's all just this, it's an interesting story by any standards. I mean, even if you're not into actually like practicing any of these things or becoming a Freemason or anything, it's like, it's really crazy to think that we have, this kind of like, really great philosophical history, occult philosophy, like Agrippa. And it's also funny because in the West today, you're more likely, if you're getting into whatever esotericism, right? You want a mind, body, spirit sort of connection or some sort of system that works for you. 9 times out of 10 in America, I'm making this figure up, 9 times out of 10 in America, it's going to be like a yoga mom or somebody getting into Reiki or getting into feng shui or getting into Buddhism or, burning Nag Champa and asanas, pranayamas and mantras, and it's always Eastern. It's been Eastern since at least the 60s. No, way before that. The theosophists of the late 19th century were all totally, Eastern. The Eastern mysticism and esotericism and philosophy has just permeated our sort of culture here, for better or worse. I'm not trying to be ethno-chauvinist about it, for better or worse. But I will say that we have in the West the whole range and scope at least as wide as the Eastern philosophical, esoteric, whatever traditions, So that, and I had no idea about it. I was a 40-year-old man. I had no idea about it, and I was well read even at that time. It wasn't like, yeah, I mean, I vaguely had an idea of like the Golden Dawn or Freemasons, just a little idea about it, but I didn't know that was like the fringes of something, a greater body that goes through, Plato and the Neoplatonists and all the Hermetists and what they call the Platonic underworld. It's just it was fascinating to me. So, and it still is. So I've kind of like, and yes, I am the type that situates Freemasonry in the kind of category of mystery traditions. But it said that on my petition. It said, you're petitioning for the hidden mysteries of Freemasonry. That's what we do, mysteries. The mystery we initiate. And when you see something like the third degree, which of course I won't go into, but what is that but an initiatic sort of cycle? I mean, but yeah, so that's what got me interested.
So I know you're from your Masonic writings, which I happen to have one of right here that you signed for me so graciously. There we go. What 2/3 of us have available.
Nice.
I know you bend toward the more esoteric spiritual end of Masonry. Is that were you I guess you said your spiritual traditions had become decrepit, I think was the word you used before you joined. Were you still sort of into that world beforehand, or did Masonry open it up to you, or?
Well, yeah, I've actually circled back, and Freemasonry kind of got me back there. And I don't mind telling you, I was born and raised and baptized Catholic, and then that kind of fell apart during my 20s, and I was kind of just, I wouldn't say atheist, but kind of like just mechanistic, like atheistic, quasi-atheistic, sort of materialist way of looking at things. And I wasn't even thinking that deeply about this sort of stuff then. I had other things going on. But yeah, the worldview change. Wait, I kind of lost where we started on that.
Were you spiritual and then came to Masonry, or were you?
Oh, yeah, that's right. So yeah, the Catholic thing, and then I met my wife, and I think I was 30, and she's born and raised Greek Orthodox. So I was chrismated into the Orthodox Church, which I really enjoyed, but I wasn't going a lot. And then I found Masonry at 40, and now over the last year or so, no, actually a few years, but this last year or so, maybe in earnest, I've started to really get back into that tradition, and I'm reading all the church fathers and the Philokalia and all the, just I'm neck deep in that sort of stuff right now. It does come from things that I've studied in Masonry in a lot of ways, because you see people like Pseudo Dionysius the Areopagite, or you see people like even Gregory Palamas, or some of these church fathers who clearly have Neoplatonic leanings. They clearly are building off things that they've read in Proclus or Iamblichus or Porphyry. So I just like that this like late antique Neoplatonic theurgical sort of transmission is kind of in the Orthodox tradition. It's baked into it from from that period. So, And that to me is fascinating. So I've been focusing on that for a while. Yeah.
And you've written a couple of books about. We just showed one the about masonry and I don't know. Would you call it? How would you describe them? About masonry and esotericism, or masonry and the?
Yeah, I think in the archetypal temple I just said, and other articles about Masonic esotericism. I guess Masonic esotericism, but that's redundant anyway, because Freemasonry, if you look up the word in Merriam-Webster's for esoteric, um, that definition can be for Freemasonry. And it actually works because it says first, I'm paraphrasing, it says for the specially for those who have been made aware of something. I forget how it goes, but yes, if you look up, hopefully somebody's doing it right now. If you look up Merriam-Webster's definition of esoteric, it absolutely fits with Freemasonry. So what I mean is we have things that are only for our members. We have our signs, scripts, words, and those sort of secrets, and we have our mysteries too. So let's see what that says.
Designed for or understood by especially designed for or understood by the specially initiated alone, or requiring or exhibiting knowledge that is restricted to a small group.
Yeah.
That sounds like masonry a lot. Yep.
Exactly. So Freemasonry, to say esoteric Freemasonry is kind of like saying a yellow banana, it's like they're pretty much all yellow. So
at some
maybe,
point between green and brown.
Sure. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
But so is your lodge especially esoteric minded then, or is it? Are you
Well,
are you the lone?
no, I have been that guy, like in my mother lodge. But they were yeah, they were an older sort of 20th century Masonic lodge. A lot of the brethren were older than me, and some younger guys too, though, a few. But yeah, they were great, though. I mean, they did good work, the memorization, which again, that has come to the fore for me as well. Memorization, I think it's probably the number one labor that we have. The memorization is how we construct our temple, I think. The mnemonic temple, when everybody, well, I'll get into that. We can get into that one later, but that's the cliffhanger you were looking for, Craig. So
That's right. Right.
yeah, so stay tuned and we'll talk about the archetypal temple and the mnemonic structure and how memory work is the single most important labor that we can have. But yeah, so then I affiliated at Lodge 290, South Pasadena Lodge 290 in Los Angeles, or actually Pasadena. And they were great guys, and they actually have a Masonic con that, yeah, I guess you could say they're esoteric. I mean, I don't know a lot of lodges that say that, though. I think we say, like, we're just a Blue Lodge. Like when we talk to Grand Lodge, we're just a Blue Lodge. We are not a TO Lodge. We're not a European Concept Lodge. We're not a Continental Lodge. We're not this or that other kind of hyphenated Freemasonic Lodge. We are a Blue Lodge. That's it. But culturally, we express ourselves differently. We like candlelight, real candles. We like low lighting, with some other ambient lighting. We like to burn incense. We like to have live organ music. We like to everybody wears tuxedos for our stated communication and our degrees. We really go off when we do our degrees. We've got a lot of special things, and a lot of we've spared no expense in getting like our swords and our Bible and our all of our accoutrement together, and that's the type of experience we wanted. We chartered this lodge in 2018, Ascension Lodge number 89 here in Phoenix. So, and some people might see that and be, like it's kind of an MRF thing, Masonic Restoration Foundation. We're recognized on their site, not that that's something anybody needs, but it is saying that, yeah, we kind of like the idea of making Freemasonry more valuable and heightening the experience with and employing all the senses, into the work. We don't have any sideline chatter or anything like that. We try and do, like everybody else, we try and do the best that we can in terms of the delivery of the lectures and etc. So so yeah, it's just it's been great to be a part of a lodge like that, and though we're of course hemorrhaging members as a fraternity on the whole, but I think the people that are coming in now are coming in for different reasons than they did maybe 50 years ago. I think you're seeing younger men who need or who want some sort of like sense of purpose and meaning, and maybe they're not finding it so readily in the world. And and now with the internet and everything, you can find out about you can get on Wikipedia or the AI search engine, and it'll tell you a lot about Freemasonry. A lot of it's wrong, but
Yes.
but I guess you got to suss that out yourself.
So do you see, as you said, we're as a craft we are losing members overall,
Yeah.
and your experience with your lodge turning to a more, I don't know what the word is. I was going to say refined, but that's not the word. A more
Restorative
form of masonry.
Yeah.
Do you think that's the future of the craft as a whole? Or do you think that's where we're headed? Or
I think so. Yeah. I mean, it's got to be made valuable. I think it's got to be, yeah, we have to retain what people, what attracts people to the fraternity. I mean, if it becomes merely a philanthropic thing or Toys for Tots or, you know, street cleanup things or whatever. I mean, we're not the Kiwanis, we're not the Elks, we're not these other groups. I mean, we've got a priceless heritage in our work, and I think people, people are maybe beginning to recognize that. But this goes back to what we started with, that whole thing about uh, in the West, most people like I could definitely go to the Sprouts or the Whole Foods right now, and I can say something to any individual person. I could say, yeah, do you know words like dharma and karma, and do you
How are your chakras doing today?
exactly that sort of thing, chakras and all that stuff. They will know, they will be able to grab onto that. But if I were to say, oh, Rosicrucianism or Kabbalah or maybe Kabbalah because Madonna was into it 20 years ago.
Exactly what I was thinking.
Yeah, maybe that. But yeah, if you say like Rosicrucianism or Hermes Trismegistus or any of that sort of Neoplatonism or Iamblichus or Porphyry, they're not going to know what you're talking about. They're not going to know about Western esotericism. It's something that really has been occult in the literal sense of the word. It's been a hidden transmission. But again, hidden in plain sight, particularly in America.
I think the thing there, Jamie, like, a lot of those people, they go to yoga class. They've maybe had their tarot cards read at some point or another in their lives, but they don't understand the greater body of esoteric knowledge that surrounds that type of thing. Particularly if you take apart Arthur Edward Waite's cards and go deep into that. It was interesting that we had that conversation, because I think of something that you said in your book, Approaching the Middle Chamber, that when you joined Freemasonry, at first you had worried that you kind of just joined a dining society and weren't sure. But when you got into the lectures, particularly in the second degree, that made what you saw there, or what you pulled out of the lecture material, really kind of changed your mind. And I have to admit, reading your book really kind of rewired me quite a bit as well. And those lectures, we divide them in two in British Columbia: the pillars and then the 3, 5, and 7. Two of they are my two favorite lectures in all of the degrees I've done, far and away.
Yeah, they're great.
And so what was your sort of experience in that moment then, where you realized that there really was something quite a bit deeper here?
So first thing, let me touch this before I forget. You were talking about now I'm losing it. You were talking about tarot.
Yep.
So notice that in the history of occult tarot or esoteric tarot, going all the way back to Anton Court de Gebelin's Le Monde Primitif, he was a Freemason. The Comte de Millet, who wrote the first article in one of the volumes of Le Monde Primitif, this is 1730, I want to say, or something like that. And that's the first time you get the major arcana of the tarot aligned to the 22 letters of the Hebrew alphabet. And then it just goes on through a bunch of Freemasons. At every turn of every transition in occult or esoteric tarot, whatever you want to call it, the way that we use tarot today, at every single critical juncture there, it was always, every time, a Freemason who made that sort of leap. Yeah, isn't that crazy? So yes, Freemasonry has had, obviously, if you look at the Rider-Waite deck, there's a J and B, there's other things that are a little less explicit. But so back to your question. You said, what was the point where it finally clicked, where kind of coming to the fraternity and seeing it as maybe being sort of a diners club or some just vapid fraternal organization, just hanging out and eating. I think, yeah, it's certainly the lectures, study I was doing on the side, yeah, I mean, in fact, there was one thing, and I think it's in Secret Teachings, and Manly P. Hall talks about Albert Pike, who said he came to Freemasonry and he saw this beautiful edifice that was in disrepair, but he had eyes to see the glory that lay beneath this this structure that had been sort of abandoned. And that, of course, I'm sure all of us have talked about this before. If all Freemasons, this is something that I've had it come up in conversations many times. If we were to not do any exegesis or interpretation on any of our work, look no further than the superficial surface level of what you're told in the lectures. If we were to not look beyond any of that and just pass on that structure without any changes, it wouldn't matter if 100 years of people handing over an intact edifice of Freemasonry, 100 years later, somebody who does have eyes to see and ears to hear, somebody who does have the reference point, would be able to decode or decipher the payload, the mystical, esoteric, occult payload that's in Masonry. So Masonry, here's another thing I've been thinking about for a few years, is Masonry is kind of almost like a Trojan horse for kind of a pre-Enlightenment worldview, because before the Enlightenment, astrology, magic, and alchemy were really just astronomy, chemistry, and technology. It wasn't like they weren't esoteric in 1200 CE. You wouldn't say astrology is esoteric. It became esoteric when it got swept into the dustbin of history after the Enlightenment. Rejected knowledge, as Wouter Hanegraaff calls it, the dustbin of rejected knowledge. So when these arts or sciences were the paradigm shifted and changed into chemistry. Alchemy becomes chemistry. That's when they become esoteric. So I think Freemasonry, in some sense, carries a little bit of that old enchanted worldview with it, because there's some things that we deal with that are metaphysical, like our temple building. It's metaphysical. It can't be weighed or measured. It's not Cartesian like that. It's not so materialistic.
Yeah.
It's something that, and it's that way in of course, maybe every theological tradition as well. I think you got to take a leap of faith. There's that happens, think about just scripture alone, two of everything in a boat, talking snakes, any number of at some point it's like, I guess it's like, how wide is your aperture for experiencing those things? Have you developed yourself in such a way where you can handle an enchanted worldview? What would you do if an earth elemental, a gnome, actually appeared in your study? You know what I mean? Like, are we prepared for the experience of elemental entities, elemental familiars? Are we prepared for the experience of a daimon? Like a spirit to make themselves plain and appear right in front of us? I mean, some people, I guess, are. Some people have widened their aperture to be able to experience that. And, I'm not advocating for entheogenic substances or stuff, but that's one place where people do it. Ascetic lifestyles, self-denial, sleep deprivation, fasting, all kinds of ways that people reach these ecstatic states, So there are ways that, breathing, contemplation. I won't call it meditation. If you're contemplating, you have a breathing exercise, and maybe you're contemplating a point as described in geometry. It has position but no dimension. It has location but no magnitude. So it's like that ineffable. Well, they call it apophasis. It's negativa, negative theology, where and you see that via negativa, it's called, and you see that in Pseudo-Dionysius when he's talking about God, how you just have to keep peeling things away, because he's not this. You can't call him this or that. You can't really attribute anything until it's just like, you hit that ineffable kind of membrane, and it's like, yeah, and that, I guess, is the sort of end game, or well, yeah, I mean, see, this is where language fails to even talk about this sort of stuff.
It certainly does. I saw David was about to ask a question earlier, but I'm going to cut him off and make him ask it the next time. So since we're running out of words to describe where we're going anyway, it seems like this is a good time to wrap up this episode of the Working Tools podcast. So Jaime, thank you very much for being here this evening. We really appreciate your time.
Thanks so much for having me. It's a pleasure.
And on behalf of Craig and David and myself, thank you all for listening to the Working Tools podcast. Goodbye.